Seated. All right, good morning. All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are ready to proceed with the state's next witness. Again, welcome back. Ms. Donoghue, you ready to go?
Yes, Judge. At this time, the state calls Dr. Donoghue.
Swear to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Yeah, have a seat.
All right, Doctor, please state your name and spell it for the record.
I'm Dr. Edmund R. Donoghue. Donoghue is spelled D-O-N-O-G-H-U-E.
And what's your occupation?
I'm a physician and forensic pathologist.
All right, tell the jury what pathology is.
Pathology is the study of diseases and disease processes.
And what is anatomic pathology?
Anatomic pathology is a subspecialty of the field of pathology that concerns itself with the examination of tissues removed at operations and the performance of autopsies.
All right, so tell us a little bit about your background as both a physician and as someone who's a forensic pathologist.
I'm a graduate of the University of Notre Dame. I graduated in 1966 with a Bachelor of Science degree in pre-professional studies. Following that, I attended Marquette, the Medical College of Wisconsin. I graduated in 1970 with the degree Doctor of Medicine. Next, I took a straight medical internship at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota from 1970 to 71. Following that, I took 2 years of training in the special field of anatomic pathology. That also was at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota from 1971 to 73. Next, I took a year of training in the special field of forensic pathology at the Office of the Medical Examiner of Wayne County, Michigan in Detroit. That was from 1973 to 74. Following that, I went on active duty with the United States Navy, and I took an additional year of training in the special field of forensic pathology at the Armed Forces Institute of Pathology from 1974 to 75.
And so what did you do after your service in the Navy?
After my service in the Navy, I went to work in the Office of the Medical Examiner of Cook County, Illinois. Initially, I was the Deputy Chief Medical Examiner, and in 1993, I was promoted to the Chief Medical Examiner. Cook County includes the city of Detroit. I stayed there until December 31st, 2006, when I retired from Cook County, but I wasn't ready to stop working, and I took a job with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation in Savannah, Georgia.
All right, so let me make sure I got this right, though, because I think you said Detroit. Cook County?
It includes the city of Chicago. Yes.
Chicago. All right, I wanted to make sure we got that.
Excuse me, you're correct.
All right, so we're talking Cook County, Illinois.
Illinois, yes.
All right, and so Cook County is all of Chicago.
All of Chicago and more.
All right, and so you were the chief medical examiner there?
I was.
All right, so when you weren't ready to retire, you came down here to Georgia.
Yes.
And what year was that again?
Well, I started February 1st, 2007.
Right. And is that how you're still currently employed?
I am still currently employed by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, yes.
Excellent. So let me ask you this. Please explain to the jury what an autopsy is.
An autopsy is an examination performed after death. It consists of a detailed external examination of the body including the clothing if that's available. This examination can be supplemented by photographs and x-rays. Following the external examination, the body is open, and at this time, various body fluids are taken for examination for drugs or poisons, and following that, the internal organs are removed and examined.
Do you also look for natural diseases?
We do.
All right. And how many times have you been qualified as an expert witness in the court of law?
More than 1,000 times.
All right. And you're licensed to practice medicine here in Georgia?
Yes, I am.
Now, are you licensed to practice medicine in any other states besides Georgia?
Minnesota, Michigan, and Illinois.
Now, are there any specialty or medical specialty boards that you're a member of or have been certified by?
I've been certified by the American Board of Pathology in anatomic and forensic pathology, and I've held that certification since 1976.
And are you a member of any professional organizations?
Yes, I am. I'm a member of the American Medical Association, the American Academy of Forensic Sciences, the National Association of Medical Examiners, the American Society for Clinical Pathology, the College of American Pathologists, the U.S. and Canadian Academy of Pathology, the Georgia Medical Society, and I'm a long-distance member of the Chicago Medical Society.
All right. And have you ever been an officer or held any official position within any of these organizations?
I have. I've been president of the American Academy of Forensic Sciences, the National Association of Medical Examiners, the Georgia Medical Society, and the Chicago Medical Society.
Have you authored any scientific papers?
Yes, I have. I'm the author of about 30 papers, most of which have been published in the Journal of Forensic Sciences.
And what awards, if any, have you received due to your professional activities?
Well, while I was in the Navy, I received the Air Force Commendation Medal for my participation in the identification of the victims of the Pan Am KLM crash that occurred in the Canary Islands in 1977. We received the Air Force Accommodation Award because we performed the services on an Air Force base. I received the Milton Halpern Award from the National Association of Medical Examiners. I've received the Distinguished Forensic Science Award from the American Academy of Forensic Sciences.
All right. And have you participated in any notable cases?
Well, in 1982, I was the doctor who went before the public and announced that Tylenol had been contaminated with cyanide in 1982. Also, during my tenure as the chief medical examiner, we had a heat wave in Chicago where more than 800 people died, and that received a lot of publicity. I did the octuple murder that occurred here in Glynn County near the Hofweil plantation in 2009, I believe.
So, Your Honor, at this time, the state will tender Dr. Donoghue as an expert in anatomic and forensic pathology.
No objection.
No objection.
No objection.
He's admitted.
Right. So, Dr. Donoghue, I'm going to direct your attention specifically to February 24th of 2020. Did you have the occasion to perform an autopsy on Ahmaud Arbery?
Yeah, yes, I did.
All right. And what was his cause of death?
His cause of death was multiple shotgun wounds.
And how old was he at the time of his death?
He was 25 years of age.
What was his height?
He was 5 feet 10 inches.
And what was his weight?
His weight was 164 pounds.
And how would you describe the condition of his body?
Well, he was muscular and thin.
And how long were his arms?
His his right arm measured from the axilla or the armpit to the first joint was 26.1 inches, and the left arm measured from the armpit to the first knuckle was 25.3 inches.
Right. Now, before we get into the actual autopsy, I want to ask you about your experience with motor vehicles and their ability to cause serious bodily injury to someone when used offensively. Have you had any experience with that?
I've had experience with, yes, motor vehicles striking pedestrians, yes.
And a motor vehicle striking pedestrian, can it cause serious bodily injury?
It certainly can.
And can it even cause death?
It can cause death.
All right. So taking you to the autopsy of Ahmaud Arbery, you mentioned that part of the autopsy is to take photographs. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And were photographs taken in this particular case?
Yes, they were.
All right, prior to coming in to court today, did you have the opportunity to take a look at State's Exhibit 2 through 23 and then 25 through 38?
Yes,
All right, and were they fair and accurate pictures of the autopsy of Ahmaud Arbery that was conducted on February 24th of 2020?
yes, they were.
All right, at this time, the state would tender into evidence States 2 through 23 and then 25 through 38.
No objection.
No objection, Your Honor.
No objection.
Third minute.
Right. Now, I want to make sure, when you first did your autopsy report, were you given any other evidence, meaning the homicide video or the frame by frame of the homicide video, for your review in conjunction with your autopsy report?
I was not.
All right, so you were just told, perform an autopsy on this young man without any real other evidence to review?
Yes. Could, Your Honor, could I have a glass of water?
Yes. We have. I think we've got a couple different people running in different directions. Looks like we've got some traction over there.
Thank you.
Sure.
So, I'm sure she'll bring the water in a moment. Is
That's
that all right?
fine, we can continue.
Okay, so when we're looking at State's Exhibit 2, what is the jury looking at here in State's Exhibit number 2?
State's Exhibit 2 is the legend board for an autopsy case in the medical examiner's office. It has the designation Coastal MEO, that stands for Medical Examiner's Office. It has the date, thank you very much, of February 24th, 2020, and it has the individual case number that's assigned to every case for purposes of photographs and evidence control. So the case number was 2020-600-1183. And any pictures that are taken will have that case number in it, and any evidence that's taken will be labeled with that number so that they can be kept track of.
All right, so the Coastal Medical Examiner's Office, that's not like a local Glenn County medical examiner, right?
No, we actually are the medical examiner's office for about 25 counties here in southeastern Georgia.
And is the medical examiner's office part of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation?
Yes, it is.
So that's the related Georgia Bureau of Investigation number at the bottom.
That is the case number, yes.
All right. So when the jury is looking at State's Exhibit number 3, what's the jury looking at here?
This is an identification photo of Ahmaud Arbery.
And when we look at the identification photo, is this taken so we know who this person is?
Yes,
Now, when we look at his face here, we have some things here, here, and here. In your medical opinion, what was the cause of those things?
Well, these are abrasions or scrapes, and they were caused by an unguarded fall.
What's an unguarded fall?
An unguarded fall is a fall where you have lost consciousness and fall to the ground without being able to put your arms out to protect yourself.
State's Exhibit number 4. What's the jury looking at here in States 4?
The jury is looking at the body tags on the body bag that Ahmaud Arbery was transported in.
State's Exhibit number 5. What is the jury looking at here?
State's Exhibit number 5 is an overall picture of the almost the entire body of Ahmaud Arbery. And his clothing is on, and this is how the body came to the medical examiner's office.
All right, so when we're looking at this, we have then State's Exhibit 6. What do we have here?
State's Exhibit 6 is a picture of the head and upper torso of Ahmaud Arbery.
And right here, what do we have?
These are tears in the shirt.
All right, and then above here,
Those are bandanas.
State's Exhibit 7.
State's Exhibit 7 is the lower portion of the chest and the pelvic area and the thighs of Ahmaud Arbery.
And when the jury's looking at here, what are they looking at as far as this belt?
Well, there's a web belt, there are shorts, and then there are underwear shorts.
And then State's Exhibit 8.
State's Exhibit 8 is a photograph of the lower extremities, and there are Nike running shoes on the feet.
Now, what's this thing right here?
Well, that's a towel or a sheet.
And that came in with the body.
Yes, frequently the body will be transported wrapped in a sheet to facilitate the transport.
So now when we're looking at State's Exhibit number 9, what's the jury looking at here?
State's Exhibit number 9 is a photograph of Ahmaud Arbery after the blood has been cleaned off of the body. And in the center of the chest there is a shotgun wound, and in the left chest and left armpit there is a second shotgun wound.
And then we see this dark discoloration here by the second gunshot wound that you've described. Do you know what that is?
Well, I think that's abrasion due to clothing, and this occurs in the area around the armpit when the clothing is put under stress or tension.
So is that like a bruise, or is it more, you said an abrasion?
It's an abrasion. It's a scraping away of the top layer of the skin. A scratch would be the lay term for that.
So when we look at States 10, we're looking at States 10, what's the jury looking at there?
This is a photograph of the wound in the central portion of the chest.
All right, so when the jury's looking at this, what is all of this around here and in here?
Well, these are abrasions, scraping away of the top layer of the skin.
And what would be the cause of those?
Well, something contacted the skin in that area that scraped away the top layer of the skin.
Would it be consistent with pellets from a shotgun?
Yes.
Then, looking at States 11, what is the jury looking at here in States 11?
We're looking at the left chest and left armpit, and we're seeing a very large shotgun wound.
And then states 12, what is the jury looking at here in states 12?
Stage 12 is a grazing gunshot wound of the right wrist.
Now, is this particular wound lethal, meaning if he'd been shot just in the wrist, would he have died?
Well, he could have died because it involved the ulnar artery and nerve. However, in everyday practice, what you would do is put a tourniquet on the upper extremity, and you could stop the bleeding there.
So, would this bleed profusely?
It would bleed profusely because it's involved the ulnar artery, and so blood under pressure would spurt from this wound.
Is that known as arterial spurt?
Arterial spurt, yes.
Taking a look then at the other side of his hand, 13, what's the jury looking at there?
13 is the back of the right hand and shows some abrasions on the forearm and on the fingers. Yes.
All right, so when we're looking then at states 14, what do we have here?
States 14 shows the fingers and shows abrasions on the posterior surface of the fingers.
Do you have a medical opinion about how those particular abrasions occurred?
Yes, from looking at the frame-by-frame video, it's apparent that those occurred due to an unguarded fall when he was shot the third time.
All right, so this is caused because he fell down.
Yes.
And when we look here, do you have an opinion about this abrasion or this particular wound?
No opinion.
Okay. So then, looking at states 15, what do we have in this area?
Again, an abrasion or a scrape, and on this one, I don't really have an opinion about that one either.
I mean, you don't know how he got it.
I don't know how he got it.
And then, what is the jury looking at here with this particular area?
We're looking at some pellet exit wounds from the wound in the center of the chest. So the pellets passed through the chest cavity and exited on the lateral surface of the chest.
Okay, so when you say lateral surface of the chest, you're talking about
The side of the chest.
side of the chest.
And we can also see some pellets under the skin there at the top.
Right here?
Yes.
So then directing your attention to States Exhibit 16. What are we looking at here?
Again, we're looking at the face, and he has a number of abrasions. He's got abrasions above the right eyebrow. He has abrasions at the lateral margin of the right eye. He has an abrasion on the lower eyelid that extends to the face. He has an abrasion on the nose on the right side. And then just above the upper lip, he has an abrasion or a scraping away of the top layer of the skin.
And once again, how are these created?
These are typical of an unguarded fall where the person can't get their hands out to protect themselves.
States Exhibit 17, what's the jury looking at here?
States Exhibit 17 shows the gunshot wound of the left chest and armpit.
Now, this particular gunshot wound on the left chest and armpit, was this a lethal shot? Meaning if just being shot alone, would this have caused his death?
This could have caused his death because it involved the axillary artery and axillary vein, which are large blood vessels that go to the upper extremity.
If he'd only been shot here in the upper armpit, is there anything law enforcement or EMS could have done to save his life at the scene?
I don't think so, no.
State's Exhibit 18, what are we looking at here?
We're looking at abrasions on the back of the left hand.
And do you have an opinion about how those were caused?
Those are likely caused again in the unguarded fall.
Now, looking at State's Exhibit 19, what do we have up here at the very top?
The shotgun wound in the center of the chest.
All right. And then what do we have here?
That's a pellet exit wound. That's a pellet under the skin. Pellet exit. Pellet under the skin. Pellet under the skin. Pellet under the, or exit. Pellet exit. Pellet under the skin. Pellet under the, pellet exit and pellet under the skin.
And once again, this is all concentrated where?
On the side of the chest, the right side of the chest.
So then looking at 20, what is the jury looking at here on 20?
The right side of the chest again. You can see the nipple in the picture that'll help you orient yourself.
And once again,
Pellet under the skin, pellet exit.
now looking at State's Exhibit 21, what is the jury looking at here?
We're looking at the right upper back and the back of the right, the left upper back and the posterior left shoulder.
And what is it that we have right here?
We have, it looks like 7 pellet exit wounds. We also have an old scar, a vertical scar.
And with regard to State's Exhibit 22, what's the jury looking at there?
This is a close-up of the 7 pellet exits.
State's Exhibit 23, let me go ahead and back this out. Is this the same lateral area on his side, just if he's turned over?
Yes, the body is now on its stomach, and we're looking at the right side of the chest.
So then, I think you noted he had on some running shoes. State's Exhibit 26, what are we looking at there?
These are the Nike running shoes that he had on.
State's Exhibit 25, what do we have here?
Those are the soles of the running shoes.
And then we also have State's Exhibit 27. What's the jury looking at there?
27 is the shorts and belt that he was wearing.
And which side of that is in State's 27? The front or the back?
It looks like the front.
And State's 28?
States 28, it looks like the back of the shorts.
And then State's 29, what do we have here?
It looks like blood.
State's Exhibit 30, what's the jury looking at there?
This is the t-shirt that he had on, and this is the front portion, and it shows at least 3 large defects.
So State's 31, what do we have here?
This is one of the defects in the shirt, the T-shirt.
Does this correspond to the shot underneath the arm?
Yes, it does.
Right. And then State's Exhibit 32, what are we looking at here?
We're looking at the defects associated with the wound in the central chest.
Okay. I may have one moment. So moving on to State's Exhibit 33, what's the jury looking at here in 33?
This is the posterior side of the T-shirt. Up in the top are the pellet exits from the left upper back and shoulder. And there are some pellet exits visible on the right side.
Over here?
Yes,
So looking at State's Exhibit 34, are these the right shoulder pellet exits?
left shoulder, yes.
Left shoulder. And then State's Exhibit 35, what are we looking at over here?
The right side pellet exits.
Then taking a look at State's Exhibit 36. Does State's Exhibit 36 correspond to what I'm handing you as State's Exhibit 343? Please take a look at that.
Yes,
And then State's Exhibit 37, does that correspond to what is actually in State's 342?
yes, it does.
Now, when we're looking at State's Exhibit 38, what is the jury looking at here in State's Exhibit 38?
You're looking at a total body x-ray taken on a machine known as the Lodox. You see shotgun pellets on the lower portion of the chest. That's the right lateral chest or the right side of the chest. You also see shotgun pellets in the right chest and left chest and shoulder injury, shoulder area. There is a fracture of the humerus, and there's also a fracture of the scapula.
Since I'm not a doctor,
Well, the scapula is that bone that children think are their angel wings, where the angel wings attach.
so we're talking that thing back over here.
Yeah, right.
All right, so this was fractured.
Yes,
All right, and
Well-
then the humerus, is that this right here?
yes, it is.
All right, that was fractured.
And you can compare that to the one on the other side and see the difference.
All right, so when you took a look at State's Exhibit 190, the video of the particular homicide, did you note anything in particular about his arm in relationship to what happened after this gunshot wound to the underarm area?
Yes, I did. In the video, after he is shot on the third shot, and from the autopsy, I know that involved the brachial plexus. He developed a very distinctive injury called Erb's palsy, which is a paralysis of the left arm, and it has a very specific sign. The forearm is rotated immediately, and the hand goes up like this in what is known as the waiter's tip position, like a waiter putting his hand out for a tip. And after the third shot, you see that, and that's due to the injury to the brachial plexus, which is a large complex of nerves that extends from the spinal cord to the upper extremity and has both sensory and motor neurons.
If I may have 1 moment. All right, so when you looked at the frame by frame still images from states 190, and then these would be contained in states 315, did you note some things that confirmed your assessment of his arm? Meaning
Yes,
in those photos?
yes, that would be the porter's tip or waiter's tip posture of the left hand.
So when we're looking at States Exhibit 315, number 860.
What you see in the area is the shirt is beginning to balloon out, and those are the shotgun pellets exiting the body.
States 315, number 861.
It's ballooning more.
315, number 862.
Yeah,
What's the jury looking at
there
here?
it's really ballooned out, the shirt.
States Exhibit 315, 863. What do we have there?
Looks like there's still some ballooning of the shirt.
States Exhibit 315, number 864.
Again, ballooning of the shirt.
And then moving forward from 864 to States Exhibit 315, this is number 880. What is the jury looking at there?
This is the picture that displays the Erb's palsy. The left arm is straight, and his wrist is flexed in the posterior position, the waiter's tip position, and that's due to the injury to the brachial plexus, to the nerves to the arm.
So what does this mean for his ability to use that left arm?
Well, he's paralyzed now, can't use that arm.
So that's due to this gunshot wound here and the breakage of that arm?
That's correct.
So I want to go ahead and take you through your process and development of your opinion in this particular case, okay?
Okay.
All right. So February 24th, 2020, you perform your autopsy and do the things that we've seen.
Yes.
Take the photos. Did you then create a report?
Yes, I did.
In that report, did you or were you able to provide any sequence of gunshots or gunshot wounds to Mr. Arbery?
No, I was not.
At that time, did you have the video?
No, I did not.
Okay. And at that time, did you develop and put in your report any opinion about the muzzle to target distance, meaning how far the muzzle was away from Mr. Arbery's body?
No, I did not.
Okay. So that wasn't in your initial report either.
That's correct.
Now, did you eventually provide at some point in time, after your initial report, an opinion about how far you thought the muzzle was from Mr. Arbery?
I did.
How did that come about?
Well, the defense attorney scheduled a Zoom video conference with me, and that question came up during the Zoom video conference.
What did they ask you to do?
They asked me to estimate the muzzle to target distance.
And at the time, prior to having the video or the frame-by-frame still shots, what was your opinion about the muzzle to target distance?
That it was about 3 to 4 feet.
And why was that your opinion at that time?
Well, I had done some research, and there is an excellent textbook on gunshot wounds by a doctor by the name of Vincent J.M. DeMaio. And he was the chief medical examiner in San Antonio, Texas. And in there he has a diagram of shotgun wounds, and the wounds at 3 feet look very much like the wounds I saw in the body.
So when we look back at State's Exhibit number 10, what about this particular wound in his torso that related to Dr. DeMaio's book that led you to believe that based on visual on the skin, the muzzle was about 3 to 4 feet away from his body?
Well, the first thing was the size. It's a large wound. It measured 1.9 by 1.5 inches. There was a scalloping on the margins. Scalloping is the fluted edge like you see on a bivalve shell. And you can see some right there, what we call scalloping.
Am I pointing to the right part?
Up a little higher.
Up a little higher
Yeah,
here?
that area, yes.
Okay. And was that depicted in this textbook?
There was a diagram of that, yes.
And so based on that diagram, you rendered your opinion?
That seemed the closest. Closer wounds were round and not very large.
So at some point in time, did you inform the defense and the state about your opinion of the muzzle to target being 3 to 4 feet?
I did.
Okay. And moving forward, did it come to your attention that the state had requested Brian Leopard to do a muzzle to target analysis based on the T-shirt in his field of expertise in firearms?
Yes.
Okay. And once he had rendered his opinion, what happened next?
Well, I got an email from Laura Hogue pointing out that Mr. Leopard had rendered an opinion that the gunshot wounds were contact or near contact, and asking me if I would like to take that into consideration in forming my opinion about the range of fire.
And did you decide to do that?
I did.
Okay. And given that Brian Leopard's opinion now differed from yours, did you then look at the video and the frame by frames?
I did.
Okay. Having then looked at the video and the frame by frame, did you come up with a different opinion based on those things?
Yes.
All right. And we're talking about the torso gunshot wound. What was your revised opinion, having now seen the video, as to the muzzle to target distance for this particular gunshot wound?
20 inches to 3 inches.
So 3 inches, but as far away as 20 inches.
That's correct.
Okay. So near contact or close range?
Yes.
Now, originally when you gave your report, you weren't able to say any sequence of shots.
That's correct. Almost never can a forensic pathologist tell the sequence of shots from the examination of the body.
But in this case, we have video.
Yes.
All right. And were you also able to view some crime scene photos as well?
I was.
Going down this path where you're revising your opinion based on this evidence you've been presented, the video and the frame by frame and the crime scene photos, did you then formulate an opinion on the sequence of shots?
I did.
All right, tell us what that opinion was.
Well, it was my opinion that the shot to the center of the chest and the grazing gunshot wound to the wrist occurred at the same time, meaning that the hand was in front of the chest and was struck first, and then it entered the body. It was my opinion that the second shot was a complete miss and did not enter any part of the body, and that the third shot involved the left chest and axilla.
All right, so I just want to make sure that we've got this. We're talking about State's Exhibit 9. We're talking about this gunshot wound right here.
Yes,
All right. And then that gunshot wound and State's Exhibit 12 to the right wrist happened at the same time.
at the same time, yes.
All right. So they happened at the same time. Would that be consistent with someone pushing a shotgun away from them?
It could be, yes.
Is it also consistent with someone maybe grabbing the shotgun?
It could be, yes.
Would it be consistent with someone pushing the shotgun up
Well, it came from the side, so,
the side?
yes, from the thumb to the little finger side, yeah.
All right, so the shotgun wound went from the thumb to the little side.
Yes,
Okay. Sort of like this?
that, well, then the shotgun would have to be tangential, you know.
You go ahead and show them what you
Well,
mean.
it could be like that, or you'd have to get it going across, and it'd also have to enter the body. This is one that could be done, yeah, like that,
Okay. So coming around this way,
yes.
okay? Not necessarily coming around this way. A little awkward?
Yes,
Okay. But it's your opinion that the hand was definitely between the muzzle of the shotgun and Mr. Arbery's torso?
well, it had to be for the injury to occur.
Okay. Now, was this a static situation where everybody just froze, or was this a fluid situation based on your viewing of the video where everybody's moving?
Well, no, there was quite a bit of movement.
Okay. But you couldn't see actually the movement?
No, the movement was blocked by the pickup truck. The first shot occurred in front of the pickup truck, and the camera was behind the pickup truck, so the pickup truck blocked most of the interaction, although you can see the feet under the pickup truck, and every once in a while you get a picture of the shoulder moving through the windshield.
All right, so did you find additional evidence within the video and the still shots to corroborate the fact that this kind of movement and the wrist was shot at the same time the torso shot happened?
I did.
All right, so let's take a look at that. Once again, going back to State's Exhibit 315. Taking a look at State's Exhibit 315, image 645. What's the jury looking at here?
Well, you're seeing you're seeing Ahmaud Arbery and the defendant struggling, and I believe you're seeing blood on the front of Ahmaud Arbery's T-shirt.
All right, so is that blood spreading due to the torso shot?
Yes.
Right. Then when we look at State's 315, 649, what is it that we've got going on, like right here?
I think that is blood coming from the wound in the wrist.
Arterial spurt?
Yes.
State's Exhibit 315, 650. What do we have again right here?
Another arterial spurt of blood coming from the wrist.
State's Exhibit 315,
from the wrist.
State's Exhibit 315, number 656.
A very large blood spurt.
And when you say large blood spurt, you're talking about this?
Yes,
This is all coming from his wrist?
yes.
Now, when we look at State's Exhibit 315, 670, what are we looking at there?
Well, a very large blood spurt coming down.
Are you sure that's not his belt with that weird, like,
Well,
long green belt thing?
His belt is in there, but the, down here at the bottom and air, that appears to be a liquid. The belt has got a straight edge on it.
All right, so when we look at State's Exhibit 315, 671,
Now, there's the belt and the liquid has separated in the picture.
State's 315, 672,
There, it's separated even farther and moving to the ground.
all right, so when we look at State's Exhibit 315, 671A, we're talking about separation right here,
Yes,
and then 315, 672A, that's actual separation.
yes.
And that form it's in, what does that tell you about it?
Well, it looks like a liquid and it's falling to the ground.
And these images were taken before the second and third gunshot blast.
That is correct.
So when you looked at the crime scene photos, let me see if I can find the exact one. There we go. So when we look at State's Exhibit 51, what are we looking at there?
Well, we're looking at evidence tape surrounding the crime scene. We're looking at the body covered by a sheet. And over on the driveway, there appears to be a blood stain.
All right, and if we move this way,
And on the street, there is another blood stain.
okay. So on the video, you don't see anybody fall down and roll around to get blood from the t-shirt onto the ground.
I do not.
All right. So what's your opinion about how these blood stains happened?
Well, I think they came from the arterial injury to the right wrist.
And so that would include in States 65.
Yes,
And then again, when we're looking in States 68
yes.
over to there. Now, when we're talking about the gunshot wound to the upper arm here, do you also have an opinion about whether this was contact, near contact, or close range for this particular one, based on having seen the video?
Based on having seen the video, I think it's close range to near contact.
Because you can actually see that gunshot.
Well, you see the gun moving up. It's difficult to tell when the trigger is pulled.
So I guess let's do this.
Mhm.
So just figure out timing for this witness for the morning. Let's just take a short, let's take a 10-minute recess. And that way we'll be able to get through the morning. So ladies and gentlemen, we can take a 10-minute recess and then continue with the testimony of the witness.
All right, sure.
a seat. Doctor, I remind you that you're under oath. We're going to take about a 10-minute recess. If you could just be available in 10 minutes. Just figured timing-wise, it just sort of works for the morning. We'll take a 10-minute recess. Thank you.
Just want to make the court aware, I have broken these down further if the court wants to, need to show these to the state. I know the state's in the middle of a difficult examination, but I have broken these down further.
Yeah, it can be discussed at some point. It's up to the parties. Just been left alone. Apparently it's a slow roll. All right, we've got, say ready to go?
Yes, Judge.
All right, got the defense, the defendants present, represented by counsel. We got the witness back on the stand. Let's go ahead and get the panel.
Your Honor, the court has no objection. Ms. Burton can come in when she's ready.
That's fine.
All rise for the jury. Please be seated.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. State ready to proceed
Yes, Judge.
from the state.
Thank you. So, Dr. Donoghue, during the autopsy, what personal items were found in Mr. Arbery's clothing, if any?
No personal items were found, no phone, no wallet, no weapons,
Nothing?
nothing.
And the projectiles that we've already talked about that were in State's Exhibits 342 and 343, they were sent internally within the Georgia Bureau of Investigation,
Right.
but to,
We haven't talked about all of the projectiles.
all right, let's go ahead and talk about all the projectiles.
Well, we found something that looked like black plastic fibers in the wound to the chest and axilla or armpit. And this was sent to the crime lab for identification, and it turned out to be botanical material, meaning some sort of plant. That's just another thing. That's a very unusual thing to remove from a shotgun wound. And
All right, so let's talk about this. When you first were examining his body, this stuff that turned out to be botanical material, where was it?
well, it was within the wound.
The one up here in the
In
left
the,
armpit?
Yes.
Like how far up in the left armpit?
Well, I don't remember exactly, but it was not on the surface.
Okay, not on the surface. All right. in addition, when you first described it, what did you think it was?
I thought it was black plastic fibers because I could only presume that it came from a shotgun shell, and usually the things in the shotgun shell are either lead or plastic.
So you sent it off to the trace section,
Yes,
but they determined it was botanical material.
yes.
Do you have any opinion about how botanical material would have gotten up into the wound track on Mr. Arbery underneath his left armpit?
And it was black, so it leads me to believe that it somehow had gotten into the barrel of the shotgun, possibly why they were struggling, and maybe pointed it down into the ground and came up with this botanical material.
So we've talked about the botanical material and the pellets that we are looking at in those two exhibits sent off to Brian Leopard.
That's correct.
Now, here's the thing. Once Mr. Arbery had been shot in the torso right here, how in the world did he keep moving?
Well, this is what is called the flight or fight reaction. And when you run into a situation that is stressful or that you're afraid of or is going to cause anxiety, your body will, the amygdala in the brain will correlate a flight or fight response. So it stimulates the adrenal glands to secrete adrenaline and noradrenaline and cortisol. And this has the effect of raising your heart rate, raising your blood pressure, dilating your pupils, even your acuity for hearing improves. It also shuts down the blood supply to the bowel or the gut, so that more blood can go to the muscles. And this prepares you either to run or to fight.
Okay. So, if Mr. Arbery had been under a very stressful situation for 5 minutes, okay, and we're talking fight or flight takes place, has he already got that adrenaline going in his system at that point?
He would, as soon as he realized that there was a threatening situation, that response would start.
Okay. And flight, meaning I gotta run away.
Right.
Okay. What happens when you can't run away anymore?
Well,
I'm going to object. Beyond this witness's expertise, the area in which he's been qualified, and it's asking for speculation.
Lay foundation, it's sustained unless there's a foundation.
Do you have the expertise to address that particular issue of why someone who can no longer flee or run away would turn and fight?
well, it's
Objection, that was not his testimony, Your Honor. His testimony was after the first shot, what would have allowed his body to continue to move. What Ms. Donoghue is now asking about is whether or not how he reacted before the first shot, and that's not a proper area for inquiry with this witness.
I'd sustain the objection asking for a foundation. I understand you were trying to lay a foundation.
That's what I was trying to
Depends
do.
on the foundation. See what his expertise and knowledge is.
And that's what I'm just gonna ask. Doctor, do you have the expertise and knowledge based on all your years as a medical examiner, forensic pathologist, to address fight or flight responses?
well, it's the fight or flight response. So after you could no longer flee, you might fight.
Now, anatomically, when we're talking about having been shot right here in the torso, okay, did those pellets hit his or pierce his heart at all?
They did not pierce his heart.
Okay, so the heart's still beating.
The heart's still beating.
What did they pierce within his torso?
Well, they got the fifth right, the anterior, well, first of all, they got the lower portion of the sternum, the breastbone. They've got the anterior fifth right rib the fifth right intercostal space, that's the space between the fifth and sixth ribs. It got the anterior sixth right rib. It got the right middle lobe of the lung, the right lower lobe of the lung, and then it got the lateral 6th through 10th right ribs and the corresponding 6th through 9th intercostal spaces.
So did it break ribs 5 through 10?
Yes.
All right, so all the ribs over here got broken, 5 through 10.
Yeah. Yes.
What happens when you break all of these ribs over on the right lateral side?
Well, it becomes difficult and painful to breathe. And also, there is the intercostal arteries run on the lower edge of those ribs, so you would bleed into the chest cavity.
All right, so when we see Mr. Arbery with all the blood underneath him at the crime scene, was that due to that blood into the basically chest cavity?
Yes.
All right. So the gunshot wound to this torso, was that a fatal gunshot wound? If he had never gotten this one under the arm, would that one in the middle of his torso have killed him?
Yes.
Was there anything EMS or the officers could have done on the scene to save his life from the torso shot?
Well, they could put an occlusive dressing on the large defect, but you would still have the exit defects in the back of the chest. And they couldn't do anything about the bleeding as long as the heart was beating.
So would he have just, in other words, is there anything they could have done on scene to save his life?
No.
And then I think lastly we have State's Exhibit 413. So I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 413. I'm just going to show you the exterior of the bag. Prior to coming in here today, were you able to examine all of the items collected from Mr. Arbery, including his clothing and the shoes?
Yes, I was.
All right, and is what's contained in State's 413 the shoes that you collected from Mr. Arbery?
Yes.
At this time, the state would tender into evidence State's 413.
No objection.
Judge, I object on relevance grounds. What's the relevance of these tennis shoes?
Relevance of these tennis shoes is to demonstrate that he wasn't.
Objection, Your Honor, if this is going to be a speaking response to this objection, we would ask that it be done outside the presence of the jury. This is an issue the court's been very clear about.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you could just step into the jury room for just a moment.
All right for the jury. Please seated.
Ms. Donoghue.
Your Honor, the state does not wish to put in a large amount of his clothing due to the contamination situation. So we're not going to put in the belt and the pants and the t-shirt or anything like that. They have photos of them, of those items. The shoes in the state's opinion are relevant because the state's argument is going to be simple, that Mr. Arbery, based on the evidence, when he would visit 220 Satilla Drive for a few moments and go in, would take off running into the neighborhood. That's the evidence. So this, of course, shows that that particular day he had running shoes on. This was what he was wearing. He walked up to the residence and then he ran away. And these are just the shoes that he was wearing. So it's evidence of what he had on that particular day, his running shoes.
It's a backdoor way of entering into evidence what the court has already ruled so far the state can't do, which is to argue that Mr. Arbery is a jogger in the neighborhood. There is no relevance of the shoes in and of themselves. It didn't inform this doctor of anything he had to do in performing his autopsy. If the state wants to argue that Mr. Arbery is a jogger based on the fact that he's wearing tennis shoes, then we should have the right to provide, again, that alternative explanation for why he's running.
I join in with Mr. Rubin's objection for all of those reasons and reiterate now for the third time, the shoes and their condition and the type of shoes they are is just another way of saying to the jury, look how much he runs. He runs all the time. Therefore, that's what he was doing on 2/23/20 when they encountered him in Satilla Shores. If that's the relevance of the shoes, the state hasn't said it quite that way, but that's the only relevance of them it could be. It opens the door to us to say, well, then let's give you some alternative views for why he would be running in Satilla Shores on 2/23/20, what we had an argument about the other day and the court made a ruling. This isn't the same type of evidence the state's trying to introduce now.
Based on the state's explanation of why they're tendering this exhibit, we will join in the objection of the McMichael defendants. I'm very concerned about these shoes going out to the jury. My understanding these are in fact Max Air Nikes. Most but not all of these brand of running shoes, these athletic shoes, are running shoes. Some of those branded shoes are shoes for other events, such as basketball. Now we're going to be sending back these shoes without any expert testimony or other testimony establishing what kind of shoe they are for the uninformed and unguided speculation of the jury as to whether these are in fact running shoes or not. There's been no testimony, and unless there's something in the discovery I didn't see, there's been nothing presented as to the tread or the composition of these shoes to establish that they're running shoes. We're just going to send them back to the jury and ask them to speculate about it. That's highly improper. And I agree with the McMichaels. It's going to open the door to all kinds of testimony that I thought the state didn't want to get into. I object at this point to the tender of these shoes.
I won't tender the shoes. That's fine.
Okay. If I understand, the tender's withdrawn.
Hmm?
The tender's withdrawn then?
Yeah, I'll withdraw it. That's fine, Your Honor.
All right, squeak, pound.
Yeah, could we inquire though whether the photograph of the shoes that was used in the opening statement, and apparently has been introduced somewhere along the way here, hasn't already done the same thing the actual shoes have done, so that the state will now think, well, we can go ahead and argue in closing argument by showing the photo of the shoes, what they argued in an opening statement, and that is he's an avid jogger. Again, we don't dispute that he was an avid jogger. We just dispute whether we can now offer an alternative explanation for his running on a particular day and place. So if withdrawing them now still leaves the state open to making that argument in closing, if they're indicating that's what they plan to do, then the door's open. And we should be allowed to give alternate explanations for his running on 2/23/20.
Well, as I understand it, the state has withdrawn the tender of these shoes, so that's not an issue. As far as opening the door, whatever evidence is in, and as far as the court is concerned, that door has not been opened. So let's go ahead and get the panel.
Yeah, if I may just to clarify then, if we don't know whether that's the argument in closing until they get to the closing and the evidence has been closed, then we've lost our opportunity to provide an alternate explanation for what I anticipate will be an argument by the state to the jury.
No, the door has not been opened. If that's an argument that's made simply based on a pair of shoes that Mr. Arbery was wearing, that's what he was wearing at the time in the neighborhood. But there's other evidence that can be argued. So no, it has not opened the door to matters that have not come into this point.
May I inquire though, Your Honor, because I'm really trying to follow with you and perfect the record, not arguing with the court. The shoes, though, are of particular evidentiary concern to the state and obviously therefore to the defense. His belt is of no concern. His shorts are of no concern. The shirt's value is minimal. It just shows where he was shot. His underwear is of no concern. The shoes, though, are critical, as I see it, to the state's argument that they've set up from opening statement forward. So I'm not sure what the court's saying. Other evidence that has been introduced has to do with the evidentiary value of the shoes. And of course, the shoes themselves now are being withdrawn, but the photos in, the argument's been laid. I think the door's been opened already. That's our position, Your Honor.
I don't know, the court has specifically said, based on what I understand of the evidence at this point, the door has not been opened.
A related point, Your Honor. Under Georgia law, the state has the opportunity to open and close. In this part of the state, prosecutors typically waive the opening portion. I think Ms. Donoghue has indicated that she's not going to waive the opening portion. My concern is the court has discretion over closing arguments, and I would ask the court to require the state, if they're going to address this running shoe argument in their closing, that they do it in the first half or first portion of their closing so that defense counsel can hear the state's argument for the first time before we have to respond. Otherwise, the state's going to come in after everybody's rested and throw this argument out there, and we're not going to have any options other than to try and object to it. And it's a notice issue, not just a fairness issue. Not just whether it's based on the evidence, it's a due process fairness issue for the state to come in after all the defendants already rested in the trial and put forth some novel argument, some clever argument based on these photographs with respect to these running shoes. The court has the discretion to require that argument, if it's going to be made prior to defense counsel having to give their closing statements, unless the court's planning to allow us to reopen and re-argue the case after the state is done.
Why don't we reach this at some point that's more relevant to where we are in the trial? I'd like to get the jury back in to finish this witness's testimony. The state has withdrawn its tender. If you want to raise that matter later, you're welcome to do so, and we can address that. Let's go get the panel.
All right for the jury. Please be seated.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I understand the state is withdrawing the tender.
Yes, sir.
All right. Ms. Davis.
Dr. Donoghue, what was Ahmaud Arbery's cause of death?
It's my opinion that Ahmaud Arbery died of multiple shotgun wounds.
I'll pass the witness.
morning, Doctor.
Good morning.
Dr. Donoghue, my name is Bob Rubin. We spoke on the phone way back in March of 2021. I don't know if you recall.
I recall.
Okay. And then I think we spoke just about a month ago in October, shortly before trial began. Do you recall that as well?
I don't recall that.
You remember being on a phone call with Ms. Hogue in
Yeah,
October?
yes, I do.
You may not have known, but I was on that call too.
Okay, all right.
Thank you for being here today. I want to ask you a couple questions just about your background. You were the medical examiner and then chief medical examiner in Cook County, Illinois.
That's correct.
And during that time, is it fair to say, Dr. Donoghue, that you saw dozens, maybe hundreds of cases, maybe more than that, of gunshot wounds?
Yes, that would be fair.
And of those gunshot wounds, the subcategory of shotgun wounds, would it be fair to say you saw at least dozens of those?
Well, shotgun wounds were less frequent.
So less than the gunshot wounds total, but
Yeah.
still a substantial number?
Yes.
Okay. And over the years, it's your, and even in your time with the GBI, it's your practice to, in examining a body before autopsy, is to start kind of from the outward and work your way in.
That's correct.
Okay. In this case, going back to February 24th, 2020, Mr. Arbery was brought into your autopsy room, correct?
Yes.
Photographs of the outside of his body were taken by staff.
Yes.
And you have a death investigator working for you,
Yes.
and her name is Shannon Walden.
Yes.
Okay. Does Ms. Walden still work with you?
Yes.
Okay. And you have other staff as well that help you with the autopsy process.
That is correct.
Okay. When Mr. Arbery came in, did you have some information about what happened in Satilla Shores on February 23rd?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And tell us who provided you the information.
Well, Alexis Brown, who is a death investigation specialist, was contacted by Deputy Coroner Christy Rozier of Glynn County.
So Ms. Rozier from Glynn County Coroner's Office gave information to Ms. Brown, who works for you,
That is correct.
and passed that on to you.
We wrote a report, yes.
Ms. Brown wrote a report.
Yes.
Okay. And at that time, were you aware that there was a video of the shooting in Satilla Shores?
I was not.
Okay. When was the first time you were made aware of that video?
I don't recall. It was certainly after I wrote the report.
It was after you wrote the report. Of course, the video itself became public in April of 2020.
Well, that's probably when I heard about it, yes.
When it hit the news, did you connect it to Mr. Arbery's case?
Well, I would have connected it to Mr. Arbery's case, yes.
Okay. So that was May or June, would that be fair to say, of 2020?
Well, I'll have to go with you because I have no recollection exactly when it was.
Okay. Did Ms. Brown, Ms. Walden, or you say at that point, oh my gosh, we have a video of the shooting, let's go back because we could amend our report?
No, I don't think anybody said that.
Okay. Was there anything preventing you from obtaining a copy of the video from Glynn County Police or the GBI so that you could look at the video and compare it to your report to see if you did want to be more accurate in your analysis of the case?
Well, there was nothing preventing us from doing it, but I don't think we saw any reason to do it.
Okay. No reason, I guess, because your report was your report.
Well, I don't understand that question.
Well, you changed your opinion on a couple matters after viewing the video.
Yes,
So when you say there was no reason to look at it in May, June, July, August, September, etc., I'm not sure I understand your answer.
well, I can tell you when I first saw the video, it wasn't broken down into individual frames, and it was really difficult to tell exactly what was going on. It was so fast.
Okay? Did you ever contact the GBI and say, hey guys, when you slow this down, or when you do break it down or get it enhanced, call me up because I'd love to look at that.
No, I never said that.
So on February 24th, you did your autopsy and you examined the shirt as we saw in the photographs. And then the shirt was sent to the crime lab, was it not?
Yes,
To be examined by crime scene analysts, not crime scene analysts, by GBI crime lab technicians like Brian Leopard.
well, yes,
You knew at the time you did the autopsy that Mr. Arbery was wearing the shirt, right?
yes,
And you knew that since you were examining shotgun blasts, shotgun shots, that shirt came between the muzzle of the gun and his skin.
yes,
Okay. Did you then at that point request Mr. Leopard to examine the shirt to see what he found in the shirt?
I did not.
Wouldn't that be standard procedure when there's an article of clothing between a shotgun or a gunshot and the skin of the individual?
No, it is not standard procedure.
Did you later learn that Mr. Leopard in fact did an examination of the shirt and came to a different conclusion than you did in terms of muzzle to target distance?
I did.
Okay. When did you first become aware of Mr. Leopard's conclusion that it was a contact or near contact wound?
I believe on September 23rd of this year.
Of 2021?
Yes,
So if he testified yesterday that he came to his conclusion, I think in June of 2021,
yes,
he didn't call you.
that's correct.
The GBI didn't call you.
That's correct.
This Cobb County District Attorney's Office didn't call you
That is also correct.
to see if it would make any difference. It was Laura Hogue who contacted you to see if Mr. Leopard's conclusions would impact your analysis.
Well, no, I found this out on the 23rd. Laura Hogue contacted me on the 29th
Of September.
of September, yes.
Okay. Prior to, well, you found out from who?
Well, we had a pretrial meeting with the prosecutor, and Brian Leopard was there.
Okay, so that's the first time, September of this year, a couple months ago, is the first time you understood.
That's correct.
Okay. For everybody's concern, I'm not going to touch the shotgun in evidence, but I have a very poor simulation, just a piece of tubing.
Okay.
Your initial analysis of target to muzzle distance was 3 to 4 feet,
That's correct.
based on the wounds that you saw.
That's correct.
And 3 to 4 feet would be approximately this distance.
From where to where?
Well, I'm sorry, from here to the front of the bench. Does that look about right?
Looks a little long. Yeah, probably about that.
Does that look
Yeah.
about right?
Yes.
That's a big difference in analyzing a case from inches.
Yes.
Okay. When you examined Mr. Arbery, I think you testified that he was 5'10", 164 pounds, muscular.
Yes.
And you may not have testified it, but you found in your examination you had tattoos along both arms. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Did you analyze that tattoos at all and provide that information to law enforcement?
I did not. We photographed the tattoos though.
And provided your photographs to law enforcement?
Yes,
Okay. He was wearing tan cargo shorts.
yes.
He had on a camouflage bandana, right?
Around his neck, yes,
And a tan bandana,
yes.
also around his neck or
Yeah,
somewhere else?
around his neck.
So 2 bandanas. In examining his body, did you note that his toenails were very long and dirty?
I did.
You've testified to the 3 wounds that you found. Center
Yeah.
chest, left upper shoulder armpit area,
Yes.
and I know these are not the technical terms that you
No, those are fine.
And then the right wrist going from thumb to pinky graze along the right hand.
Yes.
Am I saying that right? I think you used the term radial to ulnar,
Radial to ulnar or thumb to little finger.
thumb to little finger. And would it be accurate to say that the path was along that way, or are you saying it was
No,
this way?
the path was, it was kind of triangular, and it was, the axis would be perpendicular to the long axis of the arm.
Could you show that again for the jury?
Well, we have a picture of it. I think that would be the best way to show it.
You want me to go through 1,095 pictures?
And I don't. Maybe I could do it.
Well, let me see if I can easily
Yeah.
access the photo. Oh, it's right on top.
Okay, that's the picture.
So is it going like that?
Well, I think the picture speaks for itself.
Well, I'm asking you if
Well-
you could help us here.
Why don't you let him sit down, maybe use a pen to show what he would describe.
No problem with that at all. Dr. Donoghue, can you step down and maybe help us?
Step down.
If you sit down, the document's right there on the document camera.
Okay,
Let me get this door for you.
thank you.
And Mr. Rubin, did you say which exhibit number?
State's Exhibit 12.
Okay, States Exhibit 12 shows the wrist and the thumb. And
You're gonna do me a favor and just put your pen so we can see it on the board.
Okay, there it is.
Okay.
And that is going from the thumb side to the little finger side.
Okay. And I guess my question is that like straight across?
It's
Or
well,
is it at an angle?
It looks like it's a triangular wound. It's expanding as it goes farther.
Okay. And so what does that tell you about that wound?
Well, it tells you that it probably started on this side and the shot dispersed.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. You knew at the time of your report in April that the gunshot wounds on Mr. Arbery's body were the result of a struggle over a shotgun.
Yes.
Okay, and you knew that from the information gathered by, I think you said Alexis Brown.
Let me just check on that. Well, it says an altercation that resulted in him being shot multiple times.
Well, it says a struggle over the shotgun in your report, does it not?
In my report.
On page page 5 of your report, didn't you state that the 25-year-old black male Ahmaud Arbery died of multiple shotgun wounds sustained during a struggle for a shotgun?
Yes.
Okay. So you were aware at the time you wrote the report that there was a struggle over a gun.
Yes.
You were aware, were you not, that Mr. Arbery in fact had his hand on the shotgun?
Well, if there was a struggle, I guess he did. I didn't have any video of the incident.
Okay, and the video wouldn't change that. You saw, in fact, in the video and in the frame-by-frame, a struggle over the gun.
Right,
You saw in the frame-by-frame that Mr. Arbery had his hand on the shotgun, correct?
yes,
You saw in the video and in the frame-by-frame that even with the wound to the wrist, Mr. Arbery was able to swing punches and hit Travis McMichael.
yes,
Nothing about the radial artery or the wound that we saw in Exhibit 12.
ulnar artery,
What did I say? Radial
Radial.
artery, not radial artery, ulnar artery.
yes,
Okay, nothing about that wound, the blood spurting, or any other damage to the tissue prevented Mr. Arbery from holding the gun with one hand and swinging and hitting Mr. McMichael with the other hand.
that's correct.
Of course, as the medical examiner, it's not your concern of what led up to that moment.
I'm not sure I understand that question.
You don't know what happened at Larry English's house.
No,
You don't care what happened at Larry English's house.
well, I don't know that I don't care.
Because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah,
Okay. You didn't ask about what happened at Larry English's house. No one reported it to you.
well, there was television coverage of that.
I mean officially.
Oh, no, officially, no.
Okay. It wouldn't change your opinions in this case. You're looking at the body and reporting as a scientist what you see on the body.
That's correct.
Okay. Did you ever reconcile with Brian Leopard why you came to the conclusion that the chest wound that you examined, that the target to muzzle distance of the chest wound, in your opinion, is from 20 to 3 inches, and Mr. Leopard's opinion is it's either a contact or near contact, which he describes as an inch? Did you ever reconcile that?
Well, I told him that I thought that he was shot through the wrist in front of the chest. And no, I guess we never reconciled that. Although, I felt because we kind of agreed because we both said it could be a close contact wound.
So the one area of agreement that you have in your muzzle to target distance is you both agree it's at some point it could be within an inch or inch to 3.
It's possible, yes.
Okay.
I said 3 inches. Yeah.
You said 3,
Yeah,
but he testified to 1, and you disagree with that opinion.
Well, I don't disagree with it, but my opinion is 3.
Okay.
Because you have the wrist there, you can't get any closer.
So let's talk about that for a second.
Okay.
You were asked by the GBI back in May if you could determine the sequence of shots.
Yes,
And through Shannon Walden, you reported to Lawrence Kelly, that's his right name, Agent Kelly, that you could not determine the sequence of shots, right?
that's correct.
Okay. You were asked actually by the FBI in July of 2020 if you had an opinion about the sequence of shots, right?
Yes,
And you reported to the FBI that no, you don't have an opinion as to sequence of shots, right?
yes,
Okay. Now, by July of 2020, certainly, you were aware there was a video.
yes.
Did you say to the FBI, you guys, if you want an opinion, bring me the video, and I'll look at it for you?
Well, that's not how it runs. Usually there's a prosecutor who will contact us and we'll talk about the case, and at that time it might come up, but we don't continue to work on these cases if there's nothing happening.
Okay, but you were being contacted now by 2 investigative agencies and asked your opinion. You were aware they wanted your opinion about this.
Well, I'm not sure why they wanted my opinion about it. In fact, the people should know generally we do not have opinions about the order of the shots.
It actually is something that's fraught with danger for a medical examiner to give an opinion
Well,
about the order of shots.
the medical examiner just can't do that. I don't know how he could do it.
Right.
This is an exceptional circumstance where there's a video.
Right, right. And that's what you told the FBI is, we don't do that. That's not something our office does.
Correct.
But once you were provided the video, you now, as you've testified, do have an opinion about the order of shots.
Yes,
Okay, and it's based on your analysis of the frame-by-frame photographs from the video.
that is correct.
Okay. Ms. Donoghue posed to you a couple hypotheticals of how Mr. Arbery's wounds were in fact inflicted, right? One question was, could the wound to the wrist, which you've described now for the jury and shown them, have occurred because Mr. Arbery swiped the gun and somehow the
Yeah.
shot was from his thumb to his pinky?
Well, that's not exactly what she asked me. I don't, and I think I answered that question with a no, didn't
I think you did.
I? Okay.
Okay. Another alternative explanation, would you agree, is that Mr. Arbery in fact grabbed the gun, and when the gun was pulled back and fired, it could have caused the injury.
That could have happened, yes.
And that is consistent with
The injury is to the wrist, though.
would have been more like that.
Yes.
Okay. And that's consistent with the video and the frame-by-frame analysis that you've seen in this case.
Well, I don't know, I couldn't see where that happened. It happened in front of the truck. So-
Right. So you're doing your best to give opinions, but you really couldn't see.
Well, I know the location of the wound, and I know that it bled. And
So when you do see the wound to the wrist, it's already to the left of the truck as we're facing.
well, I don't know that all I see is the blood coming from the wound at the wrist.
Right. And I mean, that's what informed you was the blood,
Right.
the arterial spurt.
Yes,
Okay. My question is it consistent with the wrist wound for Mr. Arbery to have grabbed the gun and the gun been pulled back by Mr. McMichael when it was fired?
that's possible.
That would have explained both the injury to the wrist and the injury, the close contact or near contact or 3-inch wound or a distance. that
Allow
you-
room for the wrist, and we're
Right.
agreed.
Couple inches.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Wood, was all the jury able to see that video?
You testified today. By the way, I don't know, from looking at the video in your analysis for this case, did you determine how many times Mr. Arbery punched Mr. McMichael?
I did not.
Okay. You didn't count it?
I did not.
Okay. In testifying about Mr. Arbery's actions after being shot, let me back up a second. You watched the video and saw him, despite having a shotgun wound to the chest, which was fatal,
The chest and the wrist, yeah.
and the wrist, he's still able to push Mr. McMichael through the truck off screen from the video,
Yes,
some 10 feet or more from what you can see on the video.
yes,
Still able to punch and grab the gun at the same time he's punching from the video.
yes,
And you described the adrenaline that Mr. Arbery could have had, which could explain why he's able to continue doing that.
yes,
And I think you described it as a fight or flight response.
that is correct.
Now, again, you don't know what preceded what you saw on the video, right? In terms of what Mr. Arbery had been doing beforehand.
Well, there's a lead into the video. He was obviously running.
He was running towards Mr. McMichael.
He was running toward the truck.
Well, did you see Mr. McMichael in the video?
Yes.
Okay. He's actually running towards Mr. McMichael, is he not?
Well, I don't know that he was running toward Mr. McMichael. He went around the right side of the truck.
Went around the right side of the truck and then cut left.
Yes, he did.
Okay. And did you see to the right of Mr. Arbery a yard, a neighborhood?
Yes,
Okay. So you're not saying, in looking at the video, that he couldn't have continued to run, right?
Objection, speculation, and by the way, I think the jury can go ahead and see and determine what Mr. Arbery could or could not have done.
I think Dr. Donoghue's testimony was, in describing fight or flight, that after he could no longer flee, he could fight. And I'm asking him, is there any evidence that Mr. Arbery could no longer flee?
So you're asking what that's based upon?
What his testimony was based upon.
Go ahead.
Okay.
What, could you repeat the question?
Sure. I believe you testified on direct examination that someone in the fight or flight mode, when they can no longer flee, can fight.
They can,
Okay.
yes.
You didn't see any evidence that Mr. Arbery could no longer flee, right?
Well, no, I didn't.
Okay. You examined his body. He was a muscular 25-year-old man, right?
Yes,
Looked to be in good shape from the autopsy, physical shape.
yes,
Okay. And so there was nothing physically preventing him from continuing to run, right?
no,
And nothing, in fact, from the video you examined from the neighborhood preventing him from running.
that's correct.
Okay. You described the basis for the adrenaline dump and cortisol running through his veins as caused by stress.
Or
right?
fear,
Or fear,
yes.
anger.
Anger too, yes.
Okay. And you have no idea what he was afraid of at that point in time, correct?
Well, there's a man holding a shotgun out there.
Right? So could have been afraid of being shot,
And there was a man following him in a pickup truck.
right? Could have been afraid of being caught.
Caught, I don't understand.
Do you know if Mr. Arbery was afraid of being caught?
I don't.
Right? You don't know what you don't know.
Well, yes, I don't know what I don't know.
Okay. You testified that there was nothing that could be done on scene that could save Mr. Arbery's life. Is that correct?
I think that's correct, yes.
The phrase you used when you talked to us in March is, he was essentially dead before he hit the ground.
Yes,
Excuse me 1 minute. Thank you, Dr. Donoghue. That's all I had, Your Honor.
Any additional questions from the defendants?
Not from Mr. McMichael.
Not from Mr. Bryant.
Any redirect from the state?
Just a moment, Your Honor. Nothing further from the state. Of course, we reserve the right to recall the doctor.
Thank you, doctor. You can go ahead and step down. You are subject to recall.
thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is noon. Let's go ahead and break for lunch. We'll break until 1 o'clock, and then we'll continue with the evidence at that time. Thank you.
All right for the jury. Please seated.
Anything from the state before we recess?
No, Your Honor.
From Travis McMichael.
No, Your Honor.
From Greg McMichael.
Very
Yeah.
on.
From Mr. Bryant.
Hang on.
All right, we're in recess then until 1 o'clock. Thank you.